From the depths of slumber as I ascend,
so that we can feel so tangibly that God within, because that's really what it's all about. That's why we're here, is to find God within.
whisper.
Good morning, all you great souls. I just got back from a little week's vacation time off with my sister, who lives in Arizona. So I go there in the winter and she comes here in the summer. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And this reading is so pertinent because we were up at Mount Rainier for a couple of days. And I must admit, to me, that is where I can find that spirit within easily, more easily. And never easily, but I mean more easily. Because there's such beauty and such inspiration there. And I've got a very secret place that I tell you if you'd really want to know, but you know, there's a lot of people that go up there. I mean, this time of year, it is crowded now. But I've got a very special place that I go and get off the trail and find a place where I can sit and meditate and just be there with the spirit that I feel all around me. And it's just, you know, if you have a place like that, go there as much as you can. I mean, I love our little place, the community and the little places that we've created there, but there's something about the mountain and all that, ever since I can remember, that just sings to my heart. And so it's important for us to do these things, to go to these places, to spend some time there periodically, so that we can feel so tangibly that God within, because that's really what it's all about. That's why we're here, is to find God within. And you'd think might be an easy thing to do, but it's not. As we know, it's quite difficult, actually. That's why we keep coming back year after year. And I just want to spend a minute on the affirmation that we just heard, because this affirmation of self-expansion is really what we need to know to help us to continually tap in to that place within, whether we're standing there gazing at the mountains or whether we're doing our job every day. You know, God is always there with us, always in that still small voice. And we just need to put our attention. You put your attention to where it is that you want your energy to go, and that's what you're going to feel. And this affirmation on self-expansion, it really describes it very well, that what we need to do, what we seek, as it says, for what we think is self-expansion, because we've got that urge inside, don't we, to always be seeking something. And in this more worldly sense, we seek it to possess things, because by acquisition we imagine we'll expand our domain. We seek it to learn more, because by enlarging our knowledge, to expand our and we then expand our understanding. And why do we seek every new experiences? Because we believe through them we'll expand our awareness. And then I love this little lump of dough. Like, you picture yourself as a little lump of dough. And when you're seeking in the material plane, which is what we mostly do most of the time, of course, we don't get, our dough doesn't become broader necessarily, but it becomes thinner. You know, it spreads out. You know what dough does. It becomes thinner. And so even though we're seeking in these ways, through possessions, as we know, some people like to buy things more than others, but you know, there's something that we want. We want to buy certain things. We think it's going to make us happier. And you know, new homes, and whatever it is that we feel. And for a little while, we do become happier. But you know, then you can't get away from yourself. You're always going to be yourself, and so you know that'll always be there, no matter where you go. So buying things and stuff, Yeah, most of us have probably passed through that one, and now we're here in a more simple life, and so in a more happier life. But how about new knowledge? Isn't that something we all do? We like to read a lot of books and learn from new experiences from what people do. I'll perhaps learn how to cook a new recipe or learn a new skill. You know, every day finding something to uplift ourselves because it feels good to expand. But this is all expanding on the material plane. And that's a good step. But we need to take the deeper step. How about finding new experiences? I think this is the one I've done mostly. You know, you move everywhere. You know, you try this place, and then you move to that place. I think I moved 8 times from when I graduated from college until I finally ended up out here within a period of about maybe 2 years at the most. Because, you know, just looking. And, you know, some people, perhaps rather than traveling, you know, we like to travel, and that's fun. But, you know, we always come back to what we have. And, you know, we go up and we go down, and we go up and we go down, because when we do it on the material plane, that's all we can do, because it's set up that way. God deliberately hides from us. Does God hide from us? Of course He does. And He sets it up that way so that He makes it hard for us. And you go, well, why? You know, well, if He made it easy, there wouldn't be any fun, right? There wouldn't be any earth and people in it. We'd be all up there in heaven with God, playing with the masters. But no, it's a drama that God has created, and we're part of it. And we need to play our part because it's God's will. And so we look at where we are now and what we have, and we know that most of us sitting here knows that, well, this isn't it, is it? You know, we realize that this really isn't it, that we want to go a little further in our lives. And of course that means going within. So we have to have that willingness on our part to do it, to learn how to expand our awarenesses behind all appearances so that we can begin that process. And most of us are beginning. You wouldn't be here if you haven't been seeking for a while. Seeking or consciously or unconsciously seeking. And usually it's unconsciously for a long time, maybe many lifetimes, before we finally know that it's what we want. And it's at that point that we can begin to really go deep into what it is that we want. I wanted to relate an experience in my way, which was a way in which I began to really realize what happens when we really start to go deep into something here on this more on the physical plane. When I first moved out here to the Seattle area, I got deeply into the mountaineers of Seattle because I love mountains. Coming from New Hampshire, I did all that stuff back there, but then I was just hiking, because mostly it's hiking back there. And it's rugged, but it's hiking. But here I came out and it was much more than that. It was like, well, okay, and I've got to climb these things, and I've got to get crampons and hard hats and ropes, and I have to learn how to do all these things. And then there's all these lovely steep, pointy rocks that just beg me to go up them. And so then I have to learn how to, rappel, and, what handholds to do, and on, climb all these. And that was my life, as long as the little job I had, for many, many years when I came here. And I got so that I was just going for more, better, bigger, best. And, at some point I realized, what this was. All of a sudden I wasn't feeling that inspiration that I usually felt when I was in the mountains, when I was hiking, and just enjoying the presence that I felt in the trees and in the mountains. it was gone, because my ego was going, oh, you got to do better. You got to do this higher pitch. You got to be able to, keep up with everybody and do better. And it was this competition that I had set up within myself. And I had lost that very special feeling that I have when I take walks outdoors, if it's even in a park. There's little parks around here with beautiful big trees. And it just gives you that inspiration that we all need. So when I realized that, I just hung it all up. I don't need to climb those mountains anymore. What I need is to find God. And I don't need that ego telling me to do more and be better. And all I need is to relax and just feel that divine presence within. And so each of us too is in that place. And it's not easy. And a little analogy to go along with this, to understand it perhaps a little bit even more, is this is a man that was in a friend. They lived in 2 separate apartments side by side. But one of the men in the middle of the night got up and was wandering around outdoors under the street lights, obviously looking for something. And the other one noticed he was doing this. He looked out the window. He woke up and looked out the window. And so he decided to go out and find out what was up. And he talked to his friend, and he said, what is it? And the friend said, well, I lost my car keys, and I have to go to work early in the morning, and so I've got to drive my car, so I need to find my keys. And he was walking all up and down, all around this area in the parking lot, where the lights were shining down so they could really see well. And they did this for a while, and finally the other man said, well, are you sure you lost it in this area right here? And the other man said, well, he said, actually, I don't think perhaps I lost it here after all. I think I lost it out there. And he pointed to a very dark spot way out there. He says, yeah, as I got out of my car. He says, but it's so dark out there that I really can't see anything, and I'm afraid to go out there, so I'm going to look for it here. And I mean, kind of silly, but it kind of illustrates something, doesn't it? That, what we're looking for, it's so much easier to find it, or we think it's easier, out here, out in the world, and learning, perhaps learning a new foreign language. That's kind of exciting. Can learn that, or we can take a trip somewhere. That's fun. All those things that we just talked about. But what we really need to do is, realize that it's inside. God is always here with us. And we can access that, but it's unknown. For some people, it's frightening. It can be, for some people, very difficult. But whatever it is for you, and for some people, it can be quite easy to start with. We come back incarnations after incarnations. We don't know how many times we've tried to find God within us. And so you have to start doing it. There's no way out. I don't remember when I learned that one, but I remember it was like, oops, I can't just do it a little bit and think, well, I'm going to, this is it. I kind of thought, after doing Kriya for a number of years that, I should be finding God. But it's usually, unless we've had an awful lot of lifetimes beforehand, it usually takes a while. But that's okay, because whatever gain you make now is going to carry through to the next lifetime. And so you'll come in at exactly where your consciousness is now when you pass. That is the consciousness you're going to have when you're born again. Have you ever noticed that when babies are born, everyone cheers? And when you die, everyone cries? And guess what? When you die, you're cheering because your soul is free. And when you are born again, unconsciously, of course, you don't know, but you're crying. Oh no, I got to do this all over again. So anyway, just another way of looking at birth and death. And I found that very liberating, actually. So anyway, we want to find God. but we don't want to be desperate. And anyway, there's some fun little things to share here. One is Swami Kriyananda's example for us. I want to talk about because obviously he's a very important part for us in this path to self-realization that we're on. And he was with his guru when he was only 22 years old, and he was a very intellectual man, and of course all through his life, but he was very aware when he was that young that he had this very keen intellect, and as he said, he was very proud of it. And it wasn't long before Master told him, get devotion, and he knew that that was true, and he just buckled down, as he said, for hours and hours he'd buckle down and he'd chant very devotional songs over and over and over. And he said, and he'd meditate on it. And he said gradually, he said he could feel his consciousness changing. Have you ever had that experience when you're working on something, you actually feel that shift? There's a little change. You're not perhaps quite so angry. Something that doesn't make you so angry anymore. It's like, oh, you're kind of more relaxed. It's like, oh, that doesn't matter, does it? These little things start to creep into our life. We begin to change our consciousness as we meditate deeply, as we chant God, as we find God in whatever areas of our life that we can, as we use those affirmations. It works. It's a slower process, yes, but it works. And just keep doing it. And so Swami did it. And as he says, it wasn't a whole long time. He was with Master only 3.5 years. But before that time was out, he said he felt that shift in his consciousness, and he began to feel kind of really, look, I did it, he was feeling that devotion. He wasn't feeling that intellect the way he was as much. And then Master said, he overheard Master Yogananda talking to one of his disciples, and he's saying, look how I changed Walter. Walter was the name that Yogananda gave to Swami Kriyananda, was Walter. He said, look how I changed Walter. And Swami heard that, and he goes, oh, yeah. I was doing the work. Swami was doing the work. He was really putting his energy into it. But, we have a lot of help. We're so fortunate on this path. We have a great master who's been there, done that, and now he's back to guide us. And so he was the one helping Swami all along to change. And Swami said he heard that, and he let go. His pride went away. He said, yeah, that's true, I did the work, but the Master showed me the way. And so humility, of course, is one of the important qualities that it automatically starts to come to you, whether you don't work on, I want to be I want to have humility all the time, I want to be humble. Most of us don't work on that, but it starts to come, because it's part of this expanding our awareness and growing on the spiritual path. Yogananda had a good example of this consciousness. God's consciousness is everywhere. I mean, that's all there is. There is no little particles that belong from somewhere else. That little particle is energy, which scientists have proven. There is no particles anywhere that isn't first energy. Everything is energy. And scientists have proved that energy is actually intelligent. They've done experiments that show that initial energy is intelligent even. It reacts to their consciousness. So everything is consciousness. And that consciousness, what else could it be? It has to be God's consciousness. That's all there is. And so Yogananda said, if you take that consciousness and you can shrink it down into like 1 cubic foot of consciousness, which is, of course, I don't know how you do that, but anyway, if you could compress that, box, And then if you remove the box, it would expand. The consciousness would expand all over again. Well, guess what? We have God consciousness within us. It's in that little box inside us. And so it wants to expand. It wants to get out. And it wants to do it through us because it has to. So we can allow that consciousness to expand outward, and just all the little things that we do. And again, the affirmation was talking about it, and being humble, and being generous, and being loving, being caring, reaching out to people in many ways. All of these things are starting to expand that box that we've got squeezed tight within us. And that box begins to expand. And as that consciousness expands, it rises up. And when consciousness rises up, that's when we feel the joy that's there, the joy of God. So the guru is kind of like the head engineer, you might say, of the project. We've got this project going on within us. And so we need someone in charge, like everything, right? So we need the leader, in charge. And so actually within us, we have God, the head engineer with Master there, and guiding us. And so that engineer levels out the mounds and whatever it is that we need leveled out. And I just wanted to repeat a wonderful story that I heard that Dr. Peter, who is one of our longtime devotees and ministers at Ananda Village, and he's also a medical doctor, but he said he had this vision, and this is incredible to me to hear this. He said he had a vision, and in that vision he was in front of this big lump of earth, and he was picking at it he had a little children's shovel and a little tiny bucket, and he was picking at that earth and putting it in the bucket and walking away and dumping it. And he knew that he had to level that big mound of earth, and he knew all he had was what he had. And so he was feverishly working on it, and he thought, I'll never do this, I'll never get through this. And he was feeling discouraged, but then he heard some noise of something behind the mound, and so he decided to peek behind the mound and see what was there. And he did, and he said there was Master in his orange robe driving a big bulldozer and a front loader, whatever, and he was picking up this pile of dirt with his front loader and dumping it. And he waved at Dr. Peter and he smiled and he says, "Hi, here I am." And then he woke up and he said it was the most incredible feeling to have been given that particular picture. And so we'll think about it, as we're letting go of those attachments that we have and letting go of what it is that we think we want, or all that stuff. Not wanting to meditate, because it's hard. Criticizing ourselves because we're not doing good enough, whatever it is. Just know that the guru, the master, is there with his big front loader, digging through all the dirt that we've heaped on ourselves so that we can be free. Because he wants to help us to be free. But we have to do our part. We have to keep filling our little bucket and emptying it as much as we can. Because we too have to participate in this. Otherwise, it won't happen. Otherwise, the master says, well, I'll wait. I'll wait until they're ready. And I think all of us are now ready. So visualize that. I find that very, very inspiring. And just to end with another special story, because this also helps me in my everyday battle. This story was that Jyotish told us, and I've told this before here, but it deserves to be told again. And Jyotish is the director now of our Ananda worldwide work, taking over from Swami Kriyananda, handed this position to Jyotish. And he said when he was quite young, and he had just built this lovely dome for himself, but it wasn't quite finished. And so he was inside his dome cooking breakfast or something, and what was not finished was that there was no steps leading out of the front doorway. So that was quite a step to get down to the earth. It was, a drop. But it was no problem for an adult. They could just step up or step down. Well, anyway, this little girl in the community there really liked Jyotish and liked to talk to him, and he would come over and help him get up and help her get up, and then they'd have a little conversation. Well, this morning, Jyotish wasn't aware until a little while. There was something going on outside his doorstep. And then he realized it was the little girl, and she was out there trying to get in. He could hear her scratching, and how it is, and little kids trying to get in up a higher step there, scratching and trying to get their leg up. And anyway, he decided, well, he'd go help her. But just before he got there to help her, he heard her say, very loudly, he said, "Okay," she said, "I am going to give this my full blast." And she did. And she succeeded. She got up there, and Jyotish said she was just beaming because she had done it, she had succeeded. And I just love that. I find myself saying that to myself. I'm going to give this my full blast. I'm going to do what I need to do so that I can do what I know I should do. And that's really all that, it's all that what life is. It's just putting one foot in front of the other, doing what you feel is right in your heart, and asking the masters, asking God all along the way, is this what you want? Is this pleasing you? And it works. In time, you'll see yourself moving ever closer to that place in God where you want to be, that joy and that eternal love.